Okay, so here is the solving portion of your graphic organizer. So we have talked about how there's three different ways of solving so far. We have when there's only an A and a C value, A, B, and C, and then A and B. So um, first of all, you have to recall what standard form is. So ax squared plus bx plus c. So an A term means you have an x squared term, B means you have an x term, and C is just your constant. So here are the steps to solve if you only have A and C. So that means you have an x squared and you have a constant. So if you look at this one, we have x squared, we have a constant, there's no x term. So it says get x squared alone. Okay, so if you look here, x squared is alone. Take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root here and here. And then it says don't forget the plus or minus sign, and don't forget to simplify your radicals. So right now I have x equals plus or minus the square root of 60. To simplify this, you're going to do a factor tree. So I'm going to do 2 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 5. I'm not going to do a huge lesson on this, but you are looking for pairs. If you don't know how to do this, you can just email. So this pair will go to the outside of your radical. You're left with a 3 and a 5 underneath. If you multiply those, it's 15. So our answer is plus or minus 2 root 15. Okay, so if I do move to the next one, so it says get x squared alone. So right now you have a 4 with it. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. You get x squared equals 12. Square root both sides. So you have x equals plus or minus the square root of 12. If you simplify this radical, you get x equals plus or minus 2 root 3. All right, this one has a 9 and a 6 with this x squared. So let's subtract 6 first. So you have 9x squared equals negative 4. Divide both sides by 9. So you have x squared equals negative 4 over 9. Okay, so now at this point, if I were to take the square root of a negative number, there's not a real solution because you can't take a number times itself and get a negative out. So if you are ever taking a square root of a negative, you write no real solution. Okay, so if we try this one, we have a 9 and a negative 2. So we're going to add 2 to both sides. So you get 9x squared equals 18. Divide both sides by 9. You get x squared equals 2. Square root both sides. So we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. And since this can't be simplified anymore, that is our answer. This one, you're going to subtract 6 from both sides. So x squared equals 54. If you square root both sides, you end up with, let's see, 9 times 6. So plus or minus 3 times the square root of 6. And last one, we have to get rid of the 6. So subtract 6 from both sides, and you get x squared equals 0. And the square root of 0 is just 0. No plus or minus needed. Okay, so that is when you only have an A and a C term. So if I go over here to A, B, and C, so that means we have three terms. We have an x squared, you have an x, and you have a constant. So the first step says get 0 on one side of your equation. Okay, so this first one is already there. Check. Factor into two binomials. So this was on the last page, so I'm just going to go through these quick. So x plus 4 and x plus 1. Then use the zero product property to solve for x. So all this means, zero product property means, so if I have, so 0 is 0. Product means you're multiplying. So if I take some number times 0, what do you get? Well, you get 0. So when I'm looking at these two sets of parentheses, remember, I'm just taking two factors and I'm multiplying them to get 0. So that means this factor has to be 0 or this factor has to be 0. So to make this factor 0, what can I put in for x? Well, you can put in a -4. So x equals -4. And then what if this one is 0? What do I put in for x to make this 0? Well, you put in a -1. So that's what the zero product property means. Let's see, this one you factor, so you have x plus 6, x minus 3 equals 0, so you get x equals -6, and x equals 3. This is the same as number 1, so cross that out. Okay, so now this one is not already set to equal to 0, so we have to subtract 16 from both sides. And then make sure when you're subtracting 16, you're not subtracting it from x squared or -6x, because those are not like terms. So you'll have x squared minus 6x minus 16 equals 0. To factor this, it's going to be x minus 8, x plus 2, and your solutions are x equals 8 and x equals -2. Okay, this one, so we have a 30 over on this side. It doesn't matter which side of your equal sign has the 0 on it. So I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. So I have 0 equals x squared plus 7x minus 30. So when you factor that, you have x, 3 and 10. So plus 10, x minus 3. And your solutions are x equals -10 and x equals +3. This one, you're going to add 12 to both sides. So x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. If you factor x minus 3, x minus 4, and your solutions are x equals 3 and x equals 4. So there's an example on here that's not actually written here. So I'm going to do it right here quick. And I'm actually just going to take a problem that we already did. So 5x squared minus 24x minus 5 equals 0. So this one, when we factored, we got 5x plus 1 and x minus 5. So the only difference when you have an a value is if you look here, you can't just easily plug a number in for x to make this 0. So you're going to want to set it equal to 0 and solve. So 5x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. So you get 5x equals -1. And then divide by 5. So x equals -1/5. And then this one is pretty easy still. So what can I put in for x to make this set of parentheses 0? And that would be a 5. So you have x equals 5 and x equals -1/5. Okay, and then the last one we have is if you have an a and a b only. So the first thing you want to do is get 0 on one side of your equation. So we got that one here. Then factor out your greatest common factor, so 9x, and we're left with x plus 1. And then use zero product property to solve for x. So either this has to be 0 or this has to be 0. So if this is 0, well, 9x equals 0. Divide both sides by 9, you get x equals 0. So there's one solution. And then here, your other solution would be a -1. Here, oh, my 0 went to the next line. So greatest common factor is 6x. So take out 6x, and you're left with x plus 1. So solutions are x equals 0 and x equals -1. This one, it doesn't equal 0, so we're going to subtract 8x from both sides. So you get 8x squared minus 8x equals 0. Take out your greatest common factor, which is 8x. So you have left x minus 1. So x equals 0 and x equals 1. And then your last one, if I subtract 15x, so 5x squared minus 15x equals 0. My greatest common factor is 5x. So I can take out x minus 3. If I take, yep. So this solution will be x equals 0, and this will be x equals 3.